ICA 2024. I am here with Brett Hall of EMG. Welcome. We're very excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's really fun to be here.
So I thought we'd just start off with, obviously you're announcing we're, doing some integration work together, and we're super excited about it. Can you explain, just for those who maybe are not familiar with EMG, kind of your background, what you guys do, what your specialties are?
Yeah, so EMG as a company is 8 years old. And for the first 2 years, we kind of just played in the digital marketing space, mostly dealing with DR clients. And then we pivoted into streaming, so connected TV and digital audio 6 years ago. And in that time, I've definitely played or had automotive as our biggest vertical, or certainly our fastest growing. So much so that recently we rebranded or refocused, I should say, to primarily servicing automotive brands in their streaming needs. So that could be anywhere from an OEM, Tier 2, ad association, dealerships as well. In fact, that's the biggest part of our business.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I know that one of the aspects of you, just based on the previous conversations that we've had in this process, is you have a really interesting play when it comes to attribution.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of like one of your specialties.
Yes.
And as a former dealer, it really intrigued me. So I was hoping you could kind of help us, learn more about that.
How that works? Sure. Yeah. So the short of it is, because, and I mentioned our experience with direct response advertisers in the first 2 years of the company. Those guys, you don't get paid unless you're hitting a CPA or a KPI, something, and it's typically get out a credit card and purchase whatever you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And so that forced us to get really a deep knowledge in all things, including attribution. Are we tracking correctly all the way through the journey? That in most cases, that purchase, so that we could essentially prove ourselves to our clients. And so when we moved into streaming, we naturally just sought the same type of attribution and measurement standards. And so as automotive emerged, we said, okay, well, we can do some web engagement stuff. That's cool, but what else might we be able to do? And so maybe 6 months or a year into our experience with automotive, we were able to create a solution whereby we can deterministically, meaning on a one-to-one basis, tie a streaming impression, again, CTV or digital audio ad, which, by the way, is podcasting, streaming music, to a physical arrival or a dealership visit on the ground. And I can kind of unpack how that works. It's not black magic, I promise. It did take a lot of work and a lot of kind of connecting the dots between different vendors.
Yes.
But at a high level, that's what we offer. And really what that's been able to let us do is really two things. Primarily for us, it becomes an amazing optimization feedback.
Yes.
If someone's going to a dealership, they're in all likelihood looking to buy a car. Most people don't just peruse a dealership.
Oh, yeah.
They might go to the mall on Looky-Loo or wherever else, but they're not going to a dealership, right?
Absolutely.
And so if we can track, again, tied to a CTV or digital audio impression, footfall, that really gives us a great feedback loop to say, okay, we are fishing in the right area, whether it's an audience pool, inventory, and therefore we can keep on refining and create more efficacy with the campaigns. It also then creates really neat reporting for dealerships, for our business partners. Instead of talking about how many impressions we delivered or what the CPM clearing cost was, or what inventory, meaning what kind of channels, even though there's no such thing as a channel in streaming, you were on, which we report back on all of those things. And we really want to have a conversation around how did it go? How did it work? What happened?
Right.
Not what did we do?
We can always do that, yeah.
But how did it work?
Yes.
And then, that just creates more strategic conversations and certainly builds more trust and credibility in the eyes of the dealership of, okay, and the good part is they feel it too. Rarely do we have a situation where they're like, nah, I didn't really, I didn't really feel a lift, or that. And certainly that can happen if the campaign is funded or something else might be kind of not aligned. But that's the neat part too, is sometimes we walk in and they say, I don't need to see a report. I'm feeling
That's great.
I'm feeling the juice.
Yes. And I think too, just, dealers, we love things that are tangible. And so when we get some of that attribution, it's like, yep, these folks were here, that's the tangibility is awesome with that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
You started talking about the streaming, and I also know that you all do some interesting things in terms of targeting households for building audiences.
Yeah.
Did you want to maybe explain a little bit of that?
Sure. Yeah. And, it's great. Swear this wasn't planned, but attribution as a starting question is perfect because that lays at the foundation of everything we do. Once we can start tracking those outcomes, then that becomes the basis of how we decision or inform everything else in the business, including audience generation. So, for example, when we started, very transparently, we didn't really know what would work or didn't work, let's say, from an audience. So whether we get, audiences from, off-the-shelf retailers or we're
experimenting.
Yeah, experimenting.
Yes.
And so, I mean, no kidding, we probably whitelisted 5,000 in-market segments.
Wow.
From all the different providers. Because we're like, okay, let's see.
Sure, you have to do it. Yep.
And very quickly, you can start deducing what is working and what's not. And again, as a feedback kit. So candidly, even though we work with a lot of the big names and a lot of the big data providers that are here, it doesn't really matter what the segment says or who gave it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not driving results, it's not driving lift, again, that dealership visit, it either gets plucked or it gets refined, and then ultimately that now refines over 5 or 6 years. What all of it now it's first, second, and third party kind of an audience strategy that really is creating, again, that lift because we've had so much data to look and decision.
Yeah.
So and it really is so much because when we do a dealership visit, we're tracking that. We're not just tracking visits to the supported store. We actually see visits to any store that was exposed to any audience. So if 50,000 households were exposed, we might be able to measure 10,000 visits to all stores in the local area. And, your store might have gotten 500 out of that.
Right.
And so every time we launch a new store, there's actually this huge kind of multiplier effect of the data that we see. So it actually creates an even faster feedback.
Interesting.
And so all of that is how we've refined kind of going back down to the household. Who we believe is highly predictively in market there for.
Excellent. I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
You,
hopefully it makes sense. and definitely get wonky for sure.
It does.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of years of just optimizing over and over and over and dialing things into and more exactness.
Yes.
But while still, I'm sure, optimizing further, continuously, experimenting and things. So
Absolutely. I mean, we're constantly testing a new audience segment, new inventory. Prime ads just came out. We're testing that. I'm sure it's going to be great. But there's always things to test. We're experimenting with a few new attribution solutions. So there's always things to. It's really kind of like a scientific experiment every single day.
Yeah.
Right. You're just constantly you have a hypothesis to test it. You get a feedback loop, and then you just keep on going.
That's one of those things that I think keeps this industry, at least for us and for me as a former dealer, is really engaged in it. Is the experimenting? It's kind of like going on a little adventure for marketing. Every time you never know
that. It is an adventure.
You never know exactly what's going to happen, but you're going to get results, and you can look at those results and then optimize. So,
and that's a good point. Sometimes things don't work out. We'll test something and it's like that did not work.
And you got to be able to accept that and learn
that
from
did
it.
work. And now at this point, the learning curve is sort of flattened out. But we were learning a lot in those first couple of years. That's
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now I'll kind of bring us back to what brings us here today.
Yes.
So what was it about the connection that you saw from your perspective with Orbee that kind of made sense and to come together?
I mean, definitely Orbee's kind of position and just awareness in the market. I've kind of been seeing you guys increasingly create a bigger presence. Obviously, you're doing a lot with different, data elements of the space, and so ultimately connecting with Peter and Atul, it became, some partnerships or some theorized partnerships, they're a little harder to okay, maybe if we kind of wedge that in there, there's sort of an indirect path, and as we were sitting down, it became pretty obvious. Hey, look, you guys are dealing with a ton of different dealerships, their data, you're enriching everything that the middleware is offering.
Yep.
And tapping into that, for us, it would be tapping into that audience set to then do some of that testing, but then turn that into and activate it into the CTV inventory and the attribution that we have. And so it would sort of be a bespoke way of plugging Orbee into what we're doing today for activation of that into, that data set in CTV. But I mean, I would say that's just the start. There's probably, as we've talked, there's probably 4 or 5 different things that we can test. Our measurement solution would be interesting if, we could sort of enrich some of our audiences with what you guys are doing. There's, we've obviously, we're still in the early days of theorizing what all this is going to look like, but coming together and connecting, especially with first-party data becoming such a obviously important trend.
Absolutely.
Cookie deprecation, everything else, finding more and more partners that we can align ourselves and position ourselves with. So we're kind of insulated from all of these trends that are forthcoming.
Yes.
And Peter and Atul are good guys. So
they are, right? I mean, I've known Atul for many years, so I agree with that statement. So you think you painted a good picture of kind of how things will begin to evolve.
Yes.
But I was curious to hear your perspective too, to see what do you see as like the ultimate version of the Orbee EMG relationship?
Well, I'm sure it'll look different than this, but when, as you guys have become, or certainly branded in reality, have become the middleware solution, the App Store vision.
Yes.
That a tool laid out, I was like, okay, that's sweet. And so I can just, imagine and see if there's, a dealership that's perusing the App Store, whoever it might be, and they want to quite literally activate CTV with a combination of Orbee assets, that proliferation would be awesome. I know that's one of the first things that we identified and talked about, but I also think it's the most straightforward, and it's going to create the most opportunity, and definitely create a mutually beneficial partnership with us, but also quite literally for that dealership.
Yes.
Like the term we like to use a lot is truth seeking. Because going back to attribution, so truth seeking on what is going to cause that lift and that higher level of engagement and efficiency of our campaigns to drive results for a dealership. And based on everything that we've seen, talked about, and who you guys are already working with, there can be a lot of interesting and exciting truth seeking to find out some really good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm in total agreement, and very excited, as I said, to work, and we as a team are very excited to work with EMG. So we're looking forward to the future.
Yes.
And start to really build some interesting things.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be good.
Thank you so much for coming by, Brett.
Thank you for having me.